All right, cool. Well, I mean, well, once again, Mr. Thompson, I definitely appreciate your time and and the information that you're gonna share with me and whoever decides to listen to this video. Quick question: Have you gotten a chance to see any of my content on YouTube?
And thank you for having me too. Admittedly, I've glanced at a few things, but to be honest with you, I'm not really that computer tech savvy. If Tyrone sends me a link, all the way up until just not too long ago, yeah, I would click on the links. But these hackers these days are getting real, they're getting real savvy.
Oh
They're
yeah.
getting real smart. I was telling Tyrone, I got the other day, so I'm real reluctant on clicking on links now. But I had seen some of your content before, yes.
Okay, cool. So this will be my first like informal type of interview with someone that I don't know and is into a profession that is kind of like when I jumped into the chat. It's a topic that everybody
Right,
and their mama has an opinion on. Um,
right,
so one thing that I definitely want to try to do that's I don't want to say different because it feels like this should be done all the time. I don't want this to be one of those debates that you would see on YouTube or whatever the case is, because it feels like when it comes to a debate, it's only it's only made to have those got you moments. It's only those kind of debates to where you're only trying to prove a point and you're not trying to
right,
listen or get or be honest. You know what I'm saying?
right,
Um,
right,
what I want to do with these interviews and interviews that I hopefully can have in the future with yourself and anyone else, is just to be honest and
right,
try to come up with solutions for problems that we know, especially being a police officer and black. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure there's questions and situations and things that you come across that I'm pretty sure you want people to hear. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So
absolutely,
I definitely want to come into this just being honest, being intellectual, like to have an intellectual integrity
right,
with these kind of conversations, because at the end of the day, if we can kind of set the tone and the environment on these kind of conversations with me a civilian and you a police officer, hopefully with God's grace this can be an example for any other kind of conversations that other people would like to have, because I'm pretty sure you've probably seen some where they're just screaming and yelling at each other, just trying to, be cute on the camera, and it's nothing
hmm
productive that comes out of that. It's just, once
they just
again,
button heads.
yeah, and
Few people having a verbal boxing match.
exactly. And it's cute. And that's what gets clicks. You know what I'm saying? But I want
Right,
actual substance in my videos. You know what I'm
right.
saying? So, but once again, thank you for joining and thank you. Um, uh, shoot, let me. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
All
can.
right, cool. I accidentally hit the wrong button here. All right, but before we get into the questions, I kind of want to know how long you've been a police officer, what kind of got you into it, and kind of your perspective on being a police officer in the kind of in 2023.
Wow. Okay, let me see where I begin. Well, first, not only am I a police officer, I'm also a veteran. I
Okay.
served in the United States Army. As a matter of fact, on September 11th, I was actually doing electrical work down in D.C. Uh, and I'll never forget that day. We had a foreman. He listened to country music. At the time, I didn't like country music, but it got interrupted to talk about the towers getting hit.
Hmm.
So it was because of that and everything. And I have a deep love for my country. I have a deep love for my country, the people around it, and everything like that. I'm gonna touch more into that later.
Yeah.
But so because of that, I signed up. Now I was on the delayed entry program, so I didn't go in until later on. And as crazy as it sounds, but when I went through the entry process, they call it MEPS. When I went through the entry process for the United States Army, they told me I was colorblind. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. How can I be a colorblind electrician? But whatever. Um, I still wanted to go in. I wanted to serve my country. So I went in as a pack clerk because the job that I wanted to do, which at the time was electrical, they said I couldn't do due to my color blindness.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I still wanted to go in, so I went in under that. And then after some time, I did what was called a reclass. Now, when it came time for me to reclass, at this point I'd been in for a while and everything like that. And this is going to sound really messed up, but at this point I was just really looking at, because now I'm in the military, so I've seen how a lot of different jobs operate. So I started seeing other jobs, and one particular one that I came across, and again, full disclosure, I know this is messed up. This is not how it should be, but I was younger at the time, so this is my mindset. Every morning we have to do PT, physical training,
Yeah.
right? So we go on runs, push-ups, sit-ups. We did rope runs, all of this stuff, just to keep us in shape. That's all fine, well and good. A lot of times we be going through areas, they call it the main cantonment,
Yeah.
and it's like running through a city. So in the mornings they would have military police blocking off traffic for people to run through the streets. Cars couldn't go down certain roads.
Yeah.
And it never failed. Anytime we did something like that, I always see a military police officer in his car sleep. It came down to it. This was Fort Bragg, 82nd Airborne Division, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. This is in North Carolina. They don't do small runs. They're not short runs. The shortest run I ever would have was my 2 mile run on the PT test. Aside from that, I'm running 5, 6, sometimes 8 miles.
Man.
So my mindset at the time was, here it is, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm running 8 miles, and you got this guy in the car,
And they're sleeping.
sleep. And especially if it's cold outside, I'm like, I know he got the heat on. So my mindset was, well, I'm reclassing to that. I didn't know any better at the time, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I signed the papers, and all of this stuff is a contract. You sign a contract, you committed to the contract.
Mm-hmm.
So I reclassed. Kind of find out they do way more PT than we do. They do way more PT than we do. And that guy that was sleeping was probably because he did PT in the middle of the night, and we just catch him on the back end of his shift.
There it is.
So there was that. So now I'm in the mix. All right.
Okay.
And I'm doing a job. And at the time, there's different functions with military police. In respects to military police, they had different functions. You hear police, some people just think patrolman. Instantly you'll think patrolman. There's also sheriff's departments, and in the military world, they're actually they're different MOS, but they also deal with internment, resettlement. They'll have prison systems that they deal with and things of this nature. Well, my first unit, I'm gonna keep that unit's name out of it, but keep in mind it was a combat unit.
Okay.
So yes, we were military police, yes, but we were more focused on combat, not law enforcement. We would still do it. We'd have to rotate out here and there with other military police units, but we focused more on combat. We were actually ramping up to go to Iraq. This is what I signed up for. I wanted to fight. And our focus overseas was actually to teach the IPs, Iraqi police, to be police. The job failed, but that's a different topic for a different day.
Yeah.
But that's where our focus was. So fresh into the police world, I'm not really doing law enforcement as much as combat. I'm kicking indoors. I'm doing mount training. I'm clearing rooms and things of this nature. I'm talking with foreign nationals. Well, not foreign nationals. I'm talking with foreigners, and I'm getting an idea of their mindset, their way of life. Every culture is going to have differences in it.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while. I was actually relatively successful and got promoted. After it was all said and done, then I transferred to another location. I went down to Texas, And that's where I really started doing more traditional law enforcement work as a patrolman.
Okay.
I was in El Paso, Texas, and while I was there, keep in mind El Paso is right on the border, is right on the U.S. border.
Yeah.
It's nothing to drive down one particular street. You can look in somebody's living room and they're in Mexico.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, so needless to say, there's a lot of times we had, and this is a really messed up term, but we come across somebody called a BJ.
Uh-huh.
Not what you think. It's it was short for border jumper.
Okay.
So there was that's what I'm looking for. There was a language barrier, if you will.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so you had to be cognizant of a different culture and things of this nature, and that's really what it was. It was more of it was more one of those things of you have this challenge when it comes down to relaying what you want or what you need or what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Of course, there was resources there, but sometimes immediately on scene you may not necessarily have these. So, but it also helped me to develop a lot of patience. And
Okay.
also, in addition to doing day-to-day law enforcement functions within my installation, you know, I got real smart into it. Um, After that, I went to Germany. Essentially, it was the same thing as Texas, except this time instead of Spanish is it's German. Then after that, I got out the military. I drove trucks for a little bit, and then I decided I was going to be a police officer with my current department.
Okay.
And my current department is not a local jurisdiction. I'm not going to say what it is, but
Yeah.
it's not a local jurisdiction. Um, and jurisdictions do fluctuate with certain things. I'll give some examples. Are you in Baltimore?
No, I'm in Colorado.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. But you have local. Yeah, matter of fact, I have a good buddy that was stationed out there for a while. All right, but Colorado has a local police department, right?
Yeah.
Um, and Baltimore City has one as well. Baltimore City Police. I'm pretty sure unless you lived under a rock, if you have HBO, you've probably seen some TV shows about
Oh,
Baltimore
for
City
sure.
Police. Yeah. But keep in mind, Baltimore City Police can't enforce laws in Colorado and vice versa. The department I work with, our jurisdiction is different. I'm in the state of Maryland, but even I can't enforce laws in Baltimore. All right, but I could enforce certain laws in Colorado because of
Okay.
just how my jurisdiction works. It is territorial jurisdiction, but just some departments have different jurisdictions. I'm gonna touch on that later too. But some departments have different jurisdictions.
Okay. Perfect.
So
Perfect.
yeah, so for me, where I am and what I'm doing and what I've been trained to do, it kind of falls in line with each other. And because of that, yeah, I signed up for this job because I seen somebody sleeping, but in the meantime and in between time of doing it, I liked it and I stuck around with it. That's where I am today.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And I do understand it and believe, not every destination that you're at is always pre-planned. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm a big believer, God will put you in a position, in a place to where you need to be. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes, you kind of just follow, your intuition and then, boom, there you are. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely understand that. And just a side note, when I was like 21, I want to say, like right when I got married, I actually wanted to join the military, and actually I was signing up to be military police. So that was one thing I was actually in the process of doing. But I'm pretty sure, like a lot of people, I just got newly married, and my wife was just getting all worried, and that kind of swayed me out of that. But I definitely wanted to actually pursue that kind of career also. So, I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you. And I will say trust when I tell you, because I'm married too. I have children. It's not an easy task.
Uh-huh.
It's one of those jobs where there's so many reasons why a person would want to quit it. if you want to do this job and you're going to do it right, you have to get up every day and want to do it. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I've missed out on a many of things. Some things I'll never be able to get back, and it's all because of this line of work.
Yeah.
And of course, quite naturally, that caused some controversy with my wife and I over time. We've got past it. We've built past it. We communicate, of course. But it make no mistake about it. There is no smooth sailing in this line of work. None whatsoever.
And I think, and this can kind of lead into my first question, which is not one of the questions that I sent you, but it's always one of the things where, for example, when at the job that I'm working at now, I was a way planner. I was, on the computers doing my thing, and anyone can really relate to this when you're, working a job. You have your perspective as your position at your job. And, if the supervisor's, doing X, Y, and Z, and you're like, why is this, supervisor so stupid? He doesn't understand. He doesn't know how to do his job, blah, blah. But then like 4 months ago, I got promoted to supervisor, and now it's a whole different perspective I have. It's like, I'm sitting here talking stuff about, my supervisor. Now that I have this position, it's not as easy as I thought it was. You know what I'm saying? It's a little bit more things I have to, try to, familiarize with and go from there. So I kind of see that with policing, with me and, millions of other civilians. We do have a lot of criticism. We do have a lot of questions. Some of them are concerning. Some things, can probably just, be left alone because it's a lot of stupid people out there. But what is your perspective being a police officer that you just wish, like, if you could just spend a couple of days in my shoes, maybe you might just have a different approach to when you're questioning or you're criticizing or you're, pointing a finger and you're just calling me this and this. Like, what is like some things that you wish you can just put into people's head and be like, understand this before you decide to question or criticize?
So it's funny you asked that. So this is some years ago. Tyrone, you still there?
Yeah, he's still he just muted his mic, but he's listening.
And that's fine. But I know he can attest to this later. Some years ago, all right, we talking at least probably 2 decades at least. Baltimore City Police, they had this commercial on TV. I'll never forget it. It was these 2 police officers. I don't know if they were real police officers or not. They were portraying them. And they came up to this guy. It was a guy in a suit, tie. You can tell he wasn't a cop. And they came up to him with police gear. He was like, hey, how would you like to be a police officer for a day? And he's like, I don't know. One of them's like, oh, come on, you can do it. And he gears up and he's going to different calls and everything like that. And they're just the police officers with now this guy are getting the blues. They just flash in a different scene, and they're getting the blue. Like at one point, they responded to a domestic. The guy went in there with his hat because he liked the hat. The new guy, he liked the hat. He was like, the cop told him, "Hey, you might want to take that hat off." He's like, "I like the hat." Okay. They go into this domestic. The woman is irate. She took the hat off and threw it out in the street and all of this. It was crazy. By the end of the commercial, the guy was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just go home now." He didn't want no more of it. That was only one day. I really wish there was something like that could actually. For a while, there was different agencies that would do like ride-alongs, and I get it. There's a safety thing now, and especially when COVID hit, there's obviously something that couldn't happen. But I think those things right there gave an idea, gave a perspective on what police officers have to deal with. Now, granted, there is a large safety consideration that has to be taken into play, especially in today's climate. I mean, look at New York City. There was 2 police officers just sitting in their patrol car.
Yeah,
they were interacting with each other. They weren't even interacting with anybody outside. Somebody ran up on them and shot them. And I think they passed away. I'm not certain. I can't remember all of the details, but So I get there's a safety thing, but I do believe that if people were more exposed to what police officers have to do on a daily basis, they would see like, all right, yeah, they go through a lot of, excuse my language, but they go through a lot of shit.
Oh
Not
yeah.
to say that, not to say that some of them isn't brought on to them for them because of themselves. You know, there's that. But
Yeah.
there are police officers that go through a lot of shit, and it actually perpetuates a growing problem as time goes on.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, I would definitely like to see like ride-alongs or not necessarily that commercial, but bring that commercial back. That
Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
So, okay, so one thing that let me see. One of the biggest questions or one of the biggest things that it seems to be a never-ending topic when it comes to, political topics is police brutality, especially in Black and brown communities. And
Mm-hmm.
it's I find it especially more intriguing when, like right now, you're an African American, you love your country, and you're a police officer. So you're dealing with multiple layers of, different like political perspectives, I guess you could say, like when it comes to, just the past few years,
Mm-hmm.
what is kind of your perspective when it comes to media being so obsessive with police brutality, and when it when George Floyd or Nichols or a lot of these other young people that had these interactions with police officers, and you see it on TV. What is some of your like first reactions? What are some of your emotions when people are saying police are racist, and I'm pretty sure you heard a lot more things about police than I have,
No,
but like
absolutely.
what is your perspective as one is, I guess is a two-part question. One, as a police officer, and two, as an African American. What are some of the things that go through your mind when you see these news stories, virtually, 2-3 times a year?
Yeah, thanks. And it's I don't have the exact numbers, but I think it's actually more than that. I think it's more than 2 3 times a year. And yeah, you're right. I'm a black guy. I'm from an inner city. All right, and if you really look at my resume, there's a lot of people to this day surprised that I'm a police officer, but I'm also a police officer. Um, I and first, I'm sorry, I should have started off with this. Anything that I say really is just the opinions of me. I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. You know,
Yeah.
these are just my views. It's not me representing my department, United States Army. I know I've already brought them up. It's not representing any of them. It's just representing myself, as myself, and no one else.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
so when it comes down to the police brutality thing, it's 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 a it's a series of events that I believe got us to this point, perpetuated by the media. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And as a police officer, I'm going to say it. Police brutality has been going on for a very long time, especially when it comes down to the black community. I mean, if anybody doesn't know that and acknowledge that, then they've probably been living under a rock. And I'm talking about times, and I'm talking about in the days when they was using water cannons and sicking dogs on people. All right,
Mm.
this is a time where I wouldn't even been, but it's been happening. And though it wasn't documented as much or recorded as much back then, people talk,
Yeah.
and it gets ingrained in a group of people.
Yeah.
And it continues on. It almost becomes a tradition as generations go on.
Mm.
Then, as generations go on, you combine the fact that there's now cameras, recordings. I mean, one of the oldest film, not the oldest, but a very old film that people can still look up today is the Rodney King beating,
Oh yeah.
and that was back.
Like in the
Yeah. So
90s for sure.
exactly, and if you remember it, I remember it. Well, we have our elders. They've seen stuff worse than that, And these
Yeah.
generations these days, they practically live on the internet. So it's people see it now. They hear it in their homes. They've seen history of it and everything. So in the black communities, there's almost a habitual feeling that comes over you when you see police. All right. Um. So quite naturally, it should be understandable that in the black community, a person is going to be more defensive when they see police. Not necessarily saying it's always going to be that way, but it should be understood. And I'm talking about police. It should be understood that black people have had a very bad shake on on when it comes down to law enforcement for
Yeah.
centuries. So if you can understand that, if a police officer can understand that, then when they go into these situations where now these black people are being aggressive, well, it's for a reason.
Yeah.
It's literally what's been instilled in them probably all their life. So
Yeah.
quite natural. And I mean, if I feel as though my life is in danger as a police officer, as a black man, if I feel as though my life is in danger, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to cower or I'm going to fight. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't cower. All right.
Yeah.
So quite naturally, there's going to be other people that's going to do the same thing. Now, on the flip side of this coin, you got a police officer that's probably sitting there trying to do his job, but all he knows is he's dealing with an aggressive individual. Because especially if they haven't really had to live that life that this person that they're dealing with has lived, i.e., they haven't had family members telling them that police are these bad people, or they've seen videos of people that look like them getting beat down by police from back in the 90s. So it's a culture clash.
Yeah.
When they approach each other, and they essentially start butting heads, and when aggression starts to build, it's really hard for it to de-escalate.
Oh yeah,
Now,
definitely.
a police officer's job is to potentially de-escalate a situation, but that's only going to go so far. It is. Both people honestly have to have a mindset where they're going in this with the attempt to de-escalate. Because if one is trying to de-escalate and the other one isn't, it's never going to de-escalate.
Yeah.
So it is two parts. Police officers, his job is to de-escalate, but also the person that they're talking to has to want to de-escalate as well. And it's going to be kind of hard due to the fact that possibly their whole life, this person is going to cause them great harm and reduce them from police officers back in the day that ain't necessarily in the ranks anymore. So it is one of those growing problems that needs to be addressed worldwide. And that's also another reason why I'm doing this interview with you. So that the message can be put out there, like, hey, these things happened back in the past. It's very unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened. We apologize, but in the interest of saving lives and everything like this, we need to look more towards the future, not discrediting what happened and everything like that. It shouldn't have happened. All right.
Yeah.
But we wanted to stop happening on all fronts. We wanted to stop happening. So let's try to make this move on. Now, when it comes down to the media, of course, quite naturally, just like social media, any social media influencer, they're looking for clickbait.
Yeah.
That's how they get their money. So the media, quite naturally, is going to spin up and stir up a story for people to keep watching it. That's how they get their revenue. So if there's enough drama in it, of course they're going to keep airing it time and time and time again. And if need be, they might edit a few things just to make it look more quote unquote juicier.
Oh
so
yeah, definitely.
There is a problem, definitely, and it stems back from some racism within the police force. All right, that though has gone away. I'll say that racism within the police force, speaking as a whole, I think has gone away, but the residual from it is still there, perpetuated by the media, further instigating it, is going to be a problem. So there's got to be an address on essentially three sides of this to hopefully resolve it.
All right, cool. And definitely the second question is definitely going to be, racism and policing, kind of the way that some other people might see it differently, but just a few things. One, you're definitely right. Is when I mentioned at the end, when I just said a few black people were killed by the police every few years. When I say that, I'm just saying the ones that like make it on the news and make it on a national stage.
Right.
Just statistically, like each year is usually about like 1,000 black and brown people killed by the police each year. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes when I'm having these conversations with people at work or wherever, they only see what they see on the news and they think that's it. And they're thinking like, oh, it was just like 2 last year. Like, it's not a big deal. It's like, no, that's only what you see on the news. And then, like you mentioned, it's a history of this. You know what I'm saying? And like you mentioned, like I grew up in a family where they said, F the police. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they would tell, me even as a kid, which, now that I think of it, like maybe they shouldn't have, because like you say, it already conditions kids to see police a certain way. You know what I'm saying? So when I'm hearing all these, crazy stories from my grandfather, my aunt, uncle, it's like, yeah, I may not want to have a interaction with the police. You know what I'm saying? So that is definitely true. One thing with the media is, like you say, it's clickbait. That's their job, is to get people to watch. And it's kind of sad, but at the same time, like they've been kind of doing this to black people forever, is they figure out a way to capitalize, to opportune on black suffering. You know what I'm saying? Like in the news, and even me as someone who feels like they have a responsibility to try to at least figure something out. It annoys me when I see it on well, not newspapers, because we don't really watch or read newspapers, but like on headlines on all these media sites is black guy killed by officer, and it's like,
Right.
Okay, first off, can you tell me the black guy's name? You know what I'm saying? Because he's an actual person. Tell me his name. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's more than just a black guy, but they know putting black man killed by officer is going to get them clicks. You know what I'm saying? And that's something. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying it's clickbait.
Oh yeah, definitely.
People are more inclined to click on that versus Derek Thompson killed by Officer Johnson or something like that. Like, okay.
Yeah. But in even when, since I'm also doing media content, I try to refrain from doing such things. And even when I'm putting out content, I always try to make it substantive. But when I read these articles, depending on who you're reading, if you're reading from a far right wing media or far left wing, it is only going to tell you what's going to get you upset. You know what I'm saying? If it's on the right side, it's going to tell you unhinged black civilian did something crazy, and then on the left side, racist officer kills, like they're going to spice it up. You know what I'm saying? And if I can notice that, I know everybody else is, but a lot of people fall for that. And it's like, hey,
perpetuate the divide.
Exactly. So media, like you said, like that's a whole nother beast to fight, because that's how they make their money. And if they're making money, they're going to go to the extreme by any means necessary, and to essentially destroy a institution like that is going to take a lot of people kind of coming together and kind of fighting the lies. But my question with police brutality, and knowing the history, knowing yourself being a black man, so when you have these encounters with you know, a black person that might be a little, you know, a little uptight, might be a little shaken because, you know, he's being pulled over or whatever the case is. What is some ways that police officers, if you can speak to them right now, be like, hey, this is a real thing. This is how you need to handle these situations.
So this is actually one of those things where I'm fortunate in the law enforcement realm that I work in. All right, and it's actually going to touch on, because I know one of the questions that Tyrone told me he wanted to ask was about defunding the police, and I'm actually really anxious towards that question as well. I'll wait, but
I know that I saved that for the last one. I know that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I'll wait, but this is actually going to kind of allude to it. So, in all reality, policing is a profession. We are professionals, but just like any other profession, people can quite naturally speak from the cuff or they get upset. I mean, I've yet to see a time when LeBron James hasn't been upset on a basketball court, and he's a professional. Michael Jordan as well. Mike Tyson tried to literally fight cops in a boxing ring after he didn't already he bit off what's the name's ear, you know, but they're professionals. And make no mistake about it, they're great in their craft. All right, I'm not knocking any of them, but they are professionals. And so when you hear professional, they're supposed to have this profession with them. Police are no different. However, and police are supposed to have thick skin. We are. However, everybody needs to decompress at some point in time. You can't just go out and be balls to the wall every day getting I rarely get called my name when I respond to somebody that's upset. I'm called everything else but my name. Yeah. But I don't take it personal. You know, I do understand that, you know, they upset is deep rooted from something else. And especially if they don't know my name, I know it's not necessarily me, it's the uniform. But I know all of these things because I have this time where I can decompress. Sometimes I go on vacation. Sometimes I actually take advantage of my time off. Matter of fact, I have a vacation that's coming up pretty soon as well. I'm able to take this time off, you know, so I can decompress. There are some agencies out here, they don't have those opportunities. All right. They wholeheartedly, honestly don't. They got to go in for their shift, and then because the next shift is short staffed, they got to probably stay over, and they're going to do it all over again the next day and the next day, and it wears on you, it beats on you. So it can get a person to the point where that skin starts to shave off a few layers. So to police officers that's dealing with that, the one thing I could recommend, which I know is hard and it's not really foreseeable for a lot of them, but they need to figure out a way to decompress. Like I said, me personally, I take the time off that I can get. I'm fortunately enough, I'm in an apartment where time off can happen. Granted, we have to put in a request, and you know, I personally like to put it in a certain amount of time, so it's known well in advance. But I take advantage of that. I purposely stay away from police work for X amount of days, you know, just to really decompress. Because if I had to do it day in, day out for 365 days of the year, it's going to weigh on me. It's going to wear on anybody.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like you say, like anyone with a job or really, you know, with kids, spouse, anything, like time off can be a good thing. And I think that speaks to actually, it reminds me of Martin Luther King when he was, I forget where he was at, but he was in jail, and a police officer was walking by the gates or whatever, and or the cell jail door, and he asked the police officer, he asked him a question. He's like, "How much do you make?" Or he said something along those lines, and the officer told him, and I will never forget this. Like it just speaks to how Martin Luther King was able to even have these interactions with police officers, even though, you know, some of them did do him dirty. He told the police officer, "You should be marching with us." You know what I'm saying? And from what you're telling me, and a lot of people can relate, is when your job, and this is kind of just systematic too, because a lot of companies are like this. They will just suck you dry. They will just go as thin as possible. I'm not sure what with policing, but with some organizations, like if 2 supervisors can run the whole shift, they're gonna do that, even though in reality they need 4, 5, 6 other supervisors just to save money for whatever reason. Once again, I don't know how policing is with that, but that's going to, like you say, kind of thin out that skin, and that's when people get grumpy, they get a little on edge, and you start to have these kind of outbursts just because they're stressed. You know what I'm saying? So,
and when you take that element and then you put them into a situation where they come across a person that has been told all of their life that police are bad, it only is a recipe for disaster.
You gonna feel some sort of way. I definitely do understand that. Right. So I kind of do understand where you're going with the defunding the police, and once again, that's going to be the last question. But let me just throw this out there, and we can go to the next question. But some ways that I feel that when it comes to police brutality and some of the things that you guys have to watch out for when you're out there patrolling, pulling people over, responding to domestic abuses or whatever the call is going to be. One is gun regulations. Me personally, I feel like, I own a gun myself, so I'm not like, we need to take everybody's gun, but I do feel it's too many guns out there. Because if I was a police officer, I'm just going to assume, especially in Texas, I'm going to assume everybody has a gun. And if you having a bad day, I'm already on edge. It's 100-something degrees outside. Something's going to pop off. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be the last one to be shooting. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do understand that, like, that tension that, when you're pulling someone over, you don't know, they got tinted windows. I do understand that, you don't know what to anticipate. But I feel it's the responsibility of the government to make sure that at least policing is as safe as possible. If everybody and their mama own a gun, registered or not registered, then as a police officer, and this is just me kind of just assuming and guessing, that just feels like a dangerous environment. Everybody got a gun, and everybody's not, their head is not screwed on tight. You know what I'm saying? So you don't know who has a gun and what their mental condition is. So with gun regulation, just real quick, do you think that should be something the government should focus on, or are you just leave my gun alone type of person?
I don't know if Todd told you, but
no, he didn't tell me anything. I told him just I want a surprise.
Fair enough. I would add, I'm gonna answer your question, but before I answer your question, I really wholeheartedly believe that we could do a whole separate thing on just a gun talk alone.
Oh, for sure.
All right. So if you would have me back, we could gladly go into depth on it, but I'll touch on it. Do you know how many guns there are in this country?
The last I seen was like 400-something million.
400 million guns.
Yeah.
That's the number that keeps getting thrown around. I mean, personally, I didn't go around and count each and every one.
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
If I did, they come up short. But there are more guns than people.
Yeah.
Okay. So quite naturally, whether or not they have a registered gun or not, it's to a degree where people are just going to automatically conclude they might have a gun. Whether it's registered or not, there's a probability, not saying that they definitively do, but there's a probability they could have a gun. I'll do one better. They can have a makeshift gun. It's not hard. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's not hard to make a slide shotgun. That's a thing. So whether they have a makeshift gun or actually registered gun, because there's so many guns in this country, it's quite natural. It's understandable, for me at least, that somebody would conclude that they still may have a gun. Just because it's not registered doesn't mean that they don't have one.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where the problem is so big that it honestly is not going to be. It's like the common cold. It's it's out there. It's happening. You know, we just gonna have to deal with it accordingly. But the possibility of actually being able to get rid of it, I believe, is not practical. It's not possible. There's too many of them out there. And I'll do even better. To be honest with you, to be completely and totally honest with you, if I know a person has a registered firearm, I'm better with that. I am.
Yeah.
Because that means they went through the necessary steps to get it. Every state is different when it comes down to this. I can only really talk on the state of Maryland because that's where most of my firearms are registered. I had some from out of Texas too when I was stationed down there. But here in Maryland, there is a state registry, and which consists of a background check, which consists of we have a 7-day wait period. If a person went through all of that just to get a firearm, there's a high probability that they're a law-abiding citizen. And I'm okay with that, you know. So there is a thing of, all right, yeah, this person is going. I'm going to feel safer knowing that they went through these steps. But then there also is, because I'm a law enforcement officer, I am duty bound by the Constitution, and the Second Amendment clearly states a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And again, I promise you, I would really love to come have a whole entire thing about this because I'm very pro 2A, but also I am practical. I do think there should be training in the mix of stuff like that. Where we are as a country now, there is a problem that should be addressed by the government, but within reason. Yeah. And to be completely and totally honest with you, every single gun law we have on the books is not going to prevent a crime because we have so many guns. All right. If you have a person register a firearm, that does if they're adamant about going out to, we'll say murder. If a person is adamant about going out to commit a crime, commit murder, murder in itself is already illegal.
Yeah.
We can agree to that.
Yeah.
Making the gun illegal is not going to motivate them to no longer kill someone. Murder was already legal. They had no problem doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So. Oh no. Go ahead.
Yeah, so okay. Yeah, we can put all of these laws on the books, this, that, and the other. But then the ultimate question is, well, what is it going to do? And again, all of this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
I do believe that the more restriction that you put on a person being able to obtain a firearm through these quote unquote legal ways is enabling a person the ability to defend themselves if need be.
Yeah, definitely.
Fortunately enough, there's a bill that was passed some years ago. It's HR 218. Feel free to look it up. And it essentially says that law enforcement officers, active duty and retired law enforcement officers, can carry concealed in all of the 50 states, even the most gun infringing states like New York and California.
Yeah.
Because I'm an active duty police officer, I can still carry within the states within certain laws. I don't think I can have what they call high capacity magazines. That's another conversation for another day.
Okay.
Yeah, but the long and short, with so many guns, anybody who's versed on that topic is going to I automatically conclude that somebody has a gun.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking for that gun. Like, unless there's got to be telling signs that this person can be violent. You almost have to use a level of intuition when it comes down to certain things. You got to look at telling signs, and then you also got to look at the totality of circumstances. If I just pulled a guy over because he ran a stop sign, well, okay, if he has a gun, that has nothing to do with him running the stop sign.
Yeah.
You know, but if it is a domestic situation, then I'm looking for guns as well because the situation was already violent prior to me getting there.
Yeah.
But no matter what, I automatically conclude that everybody has a gun. It doesn't make me nervous. But also at the same time, again, I am pro 2A. I'm very pro 2A. I have a few firearms. and as a matter of fact, my son, who's 18 now, But he helped me build one of mine, because I
Okay.
build mine. I don't buy them flat out.
Yeah.
And he knows the importance of the safety of it, of the safety aspect of it, and what it can actually do. I trained him on these things as he was coming along. I didn't restrict him from him. Oh, let me back up. I didn't hide them from him or say don't ever touch this or nothing like that. No, I took that novelty out of it. All
Yeah.
right, it's the interest went away in a safe environment, to the point where he knows with this tool, because it is a tool. He knows what this tool is capable of doing.
Yeah.
He's gone out and shot it. And him and I, if you ever look at my Facebook, there's actually a video of him and I. We went to our local gun range and we're shooting. We're having a good time and everything. It's a safe environment and whatnot. And that's it. I think that I think there should be responsible gun ownership, and with some restriction, but not to the point where it's completely infringing on a person's ability to do such. I mean, let's be honest with each other here. There's numerous cases where there's a person will have a protective order. Well, we know a protective order is really just a piece of paper,
Yeah.
and that's not going to really stop a person from doing what they want to do. If a person runs up in your house, yeah, you have a protective order. Yeah, of course.
But that's not
You're
going.
legally covered now, but that's not going to stop them from trying to run up in your house.
Yeah.
Now what? I'm really adamant and I'm proud to do my job, but I'm telling you right now, it's going to take me time to get to certain places. Even with my lights and sirens, and I get to run past all the red lights and all of this, traffic is going to move out of my way. It's still going to take me time. And in a life or death situation, seconds are important.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I wholeheartedly believe in a person's right to keep and bear arms.
So definitely, like you say, it's gonna be a video dedicated for that, because I've probably done. Of course, I had these conversations and thoughts before I started this channel, but I probably put out like maybe 4 or 5 videos talking about gun regulations and the Second Amendment and everything, and just to kind of button this question up, I feel kind of like what you said. If somebody is willing to take the steps to own a gun, it's a good chance they're not going to just, wild out and just kill random people for no reason. Now, some people have with registered guns, but it's not as common as people who just bought the guns just to do it. That seems to be more the case. Like, now, if they're owners of guns for years and years, then it's definitely a different approach they take with it. But my I guess view is guns in America is an issue. It's a big issue. Mm-hmm. And to solve that big issue is going to take big solutions. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of want to say this for the next video, but I'm almost to the point to where if we need to a certain extent take guns from people, that's where I'm at this point. Now I know you laughing, and I don't want to derail to a different topic, but just to leave you with that, you know what I'm saying? So
yes, let's please do another interview just on that alone.
So my next question, is going to, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit with your answer. Do you believe racism or a form of bigotry is in policing, and does it play a part in policing today?
I don't think it's necessarily racism per se. More along the lines of different levels of class. How can I best put this? Okay, have you ever been to Baltimore?
I haven't.
You haven't?
No.
Perfect. I'm going to use you as an example. I'm not picking on you, but I am going to use you as an example.
Okay.
There's different class when it comes. There's different classisms. All right, that may not be a word, but in all reality, policing should be done within its community. There was a standing order for a while. I don't know if it's still the thing with Baltimore City Police, but you actually had to live in the city in order to be a police officer in the
Yeah.
city. And the reason why is because people in the city could understand how people in the city operate. If you got somebody from, like yourself, Colorado, who's never been to Baltimore, certain things is going to be different to you.
Yeah.
All right. Like if you're driving, you're now in Baltimore. Picture you're now in Baltimore and you're driving down North Avenue. I get you don't know what North Avenue is, but North Avenue is a very long street that literally stretches from one end of the city to the other.
Okay.
All right. And you're driving down the street, and as you're driving down the street, you see somebody that's in the street, not necessarily right in the middle, but they are in the driving lane. They have their arm out and they're shaking their hand in a certain gesture. I know what that means. I know what they're attempting to do, but you never being there, this is going to raise some suspicion to you. And especially if you're in a law enforcement capacity, you might quite naturally think that this is some illegal activity that may be going on. Not saying that you would, but there is a possibility.
Yeah.
Lesser known fact, a person is doing that, they're actually just trying to wave down what we call a hack. It's a makeshift taxi service.
Okay.
But yeah. But only people that live in that area is going to know stuff like that. You know, it's a culture thing.
Yeah.
You know, like if you go into a store and you say, "Let me get a half and half," do you know what a half and half is?
I just know a half and half in a burrito, but I'm pretty sure that's not what you're.
It's definitely not a burrito.
Okay.
It's half ice. It's half iced tea, half lemonade.
Okay.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people call it an Arnold Palmer. I didn't even know it was called that until after I left Baltimore. But these are culture things.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily a racism thing. It's just that one culture is colliding with another culture, and if they just so happen to be two different races, then it's just instantly chalked up as racism. Because when you see somebody that looks like you, quite naturally you think they come from the same area as you, and that's not necessarily the case. I'll do you one better. I'm a black guy, and I've played lacrosse. Now, I don't know if that's weird to you, but I'm pretty sure one of your listeners is going to say, "What, a black guy that plays lacrosse?" Yeah, Tyrone can tell you. I played lacrosse when I was in school. I didn't think anything of it until I actually went into the military and I'm talking to other black people. It's like, yo, you play lacrosse? That's a white people sport.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not. It's actually a sport that was played originally by Native Americans. They played it to death. But, you know, instantly some people will say, well, that's a white people's sport.
Yeah.
And then it's chalked up as racism. And it's not necessarily that. It's just a different type of culture.
Yeah.
So I don't think so to answer your question, I don't think it's necessarily racism per se. It's just that there's such a clash of cultures when it comes down to certain things. And the easy answer is just to throw it into the racism category. All right.
Okay.
And that's just my mindset.
Okay. So I definitely do understand what you're saying. Now, when it comes to police officers policing in their area, I think that's a great start. You know what I'm saying? Because like you say, if you know, Officer A is driving, an hour out his way to police a community that he has no relationship with, no upbringing in, he's gonna treat them differently than the people that he has to see every single day. I think that does play, a crucial part in getting to know the people that you're, supposed to be protecting. You know what I'm saying? I think that adds a good element to that relationship. So one thing I want to say now, when it comes to media, now I a few minutes ago I just dogged media talking about always showing kind of the worst interactions when it comes to policing and civilians. But on the flip side, sometimes it is good to have that information because, like you say, back in the 70s and 60s, this was only by word of mouth. You know what I'm saying? If you told someone who lived in Beverly Hills that, racism is, a thing, they probably look at you crazy because it's like, I don't see what you're talking about. But, with internet and all these social media platforms, we can kind of see things that black folks been saying for years, like, hey, this actually happens. You know what I'm saying? Now we can show people like we're not just making this stuff up. You know what I'm saying? Because, some people be like, oh, he probably was just saying something crazy to the police officer, or he probably deserved it. And now when we can see body cam footage or, footage from someone's phone, it's not that kind of story. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Some, unfortunately, it's, for little to no reason, so my question is, it's countless of, and I covered some of them. I don't really like to just always cover, these kind of interactions, because it's, to me, it's not, nothing really cute to talk about, but, it does happen, unfortunately. But when I do hear, just a couple weeks ago, there was a sheriff, he was recorded, unknowingly. So he was, freely to say how he really felt. But, he's been a sheriff in this, in this area for decades, and he was just like, man, if this was back in the, back in the days where, we could just beat the N words and just hang them on a tree, and he was just kind of going on. It's like, wait, he's a sheriff? And how many black people live in that area? Because I'm pretty sure they need to know this. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of countless of these kind of, audio leaks or these things kind of brought to light, like these police officers on Facebook saying some crazy things about, Mexican people. And it's like, why is he a police officer and he feels these sort of ways about, non-white people? You know what I'm saying? So I do understand that when it comes to policing in class, that's a thing too, with poor people, homeless people, and just the dynamics of that. But I do believe that there is racist cops, and I don't know how you would weed something like that out, but do you believe that there is racist cops?
So, I mean, anything's possible. Personally, I haven't came across any, and I don't really know the video that you're referring to, but just speak, but how can I best put this? Taking everything for what it is on the surface. And from what you said, this sheriff had been there for X amount of years. You said decades.
Yeah,
it's safe to say he got more days behind him than he does in front.
yeah.
It's personally speaking, people like that shouldn't be given the opportunity to retire.
Okay.
And I say that because like I said, he's got more days behind him than he does in front. One of these days he's going to be out the door, and he shouldn't be able to reap any benefits from anything that he's done in his past. I.e., get a police retirement. And that is wholeheartedly racist. In all reality, any investigations that he was a part of should be brought up for review. I don't know if that was one of the in states for him, but that should definitely be brought up for review. And if there are police officers out there like that, again, I've never seen any, but if there are police officers out there like that, then they need to be out. If there's a possibility that they can get out without any type of benefits coming towards them, that'd be even great. Unfortunately, being a racist isn't against the law.
That's true.
And on the surface, being a racist isn't against the law. It's the acts that you do under the umbrella of racism that could be considered against the law. But it's the acts. So being a racist isn't against the law, unfortunately. So there is, from what you said, there wasn't really nothing that can really get him brought up on any type of charges. I mean, obviously, any investigation, like I said, any investigations he was part of should definitely be brought up for review and definitely be now held to the scrutiny of clearly his views on people that doesn't share the same ethnicity of him. But if they are racist, I think that the way this country is moving, it's good and bad. But when it comes down to the perspective of racism, I wholeheartedly believe that it's diminishing quickly. I mean, let's be honest with each other here. There isn't many people getting crosses burned on their front yard. Not anymore. All right.
Yeah.
And I know that's an extreme, but that's not really happening these days. And especially when it comes down to like interracial relationships. I was a part of an interracial relationship for a while before I met my wife. So I think it is one of those things that's gradually gaining speed and dying out. So even if it is here now, I think in the next so many years it'll be gone away. I mean, from what you're telling me, that sheriff, he's old and decrepit.
Yeah.
He's gonna put the corner somewhere, and he won't be given the opportunity to continue to be a cancer within his department. And I denounce people like that. I personally couldn't find myself to be able to work for a person like that, because then it makes me question, like, well, how do you even feel about me? And we're supposed to be on the same side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, to answer your question, is there racism within the ranks? I don't know. I haven't seen it, but but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. If it does exist, I denounce it. They need to get out.
Mm.
Doesn't matter how long they've been there. They do. They can be racist and flip burgers or something. And I'm not trying to downplay burger flipping. You know, like I did it for a while, but they need to be around. They need to be in a job where they're not around people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You're racist in your corner somewhere else, and don't infect the rest of the civilized people.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't infect them.
Now you are right, and I like the way you phrase that. Being racist is not against the law. Is you acting on your bigotry that can cause harm to other people or have you break the law or whatnot. I do know it's when I think of racism, back in the the 40s, back during the 1600s, you know what I'm saying? Like it seems to have transformed to me. Like that's the way I kind of imagine it in my head. Like you say, back then, lynching was a thing. Like unfortunately, you can go on Google, type that up, and you can see some horrific things. That was normal to them, and now I haven't seen that in real life. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but to me, it feels like racism kind of transforms in a way. It kind of transforms to still be present, but it's not going to be, someone walking down your street with a white robe and a one of those corny hats that they like to wear. It's going to be
all
a little.
Negroes go to the back. They served in the back. They can't even come through the front door. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not going to be shown in that way. I do feel if someone is racist and kind of it doesn't really matter what profession they're in. So I don't want to make it seem like it's just a policing thing. Like you say, if that police officer went to flip burgers and he sees me that I'm ordering a burger and he just doesn't like Negroes in general, he might spit in my food. You know what I'm saying? Like I just don't.
Correct.
Like he's going to somehow, some way enact his hatred on whoever whenever he feels like it. You know what I'm saying? My thing is, when it comes to policing, it's a little bit more intimate with civilians because now you have the authority. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you have a weapon. So if you mix that with someone who is racist or just one of those kind of weirdos, like that's a bad position for them to be in. And one thing, and of course, we can't solve racism. I can't read people's hearts. I can't read people's minds. I'm not going to assume every white cop is racist. That's kind of, ignorant to me. But it feels like if it was more transparency, and once again, I don't know everything when it comes to policing. I just see what I read and kind of just go from there. But one thing that I kind of notice with these individual cops that have shown that has a history of these, some could say racist responses with civilians or whatever the case or whatever you want to call it. But I believe if a police officer's history, their interaction history, I'm pretty sure there's a word for that. If that was public, that would be a good step. And then two, making it hard or indefinite for cops who had these inappropriate interaction with civilians, if it's, you know, if they did their investigation and found out that it was, you know, racism at the end of the day, they should not be able
racially
to
motivated
or
biased. Yeah.
They should not be easily transferred to another division. Like, because I seen a lot of cases where, hey, he wasn't a good fit here, he did this and this, and he has a bad history of that, and they just send him, you know, just across the bridge. And it's like, that's not solving anything. You know what I'm saying? And I feel the community should be aware of that. You know,
right.
How do you feel about that?
So, one of the things, and I'm be honest with you, what I'm about to tell you, I felt kind of weird about initially, but that's also because of my ignorance towards the totality of it. When I started working with this department, I'll never forget this. I went through the application process. The application process was online, and I did all of the necessary steps via phone and all of this. Mind you, at the time I was driving trucks, so it was actually kind of hard. Okay. But I went through all of that. Came time for the interview. I'll never forget this. It came time for the interview, and I heard that my department was up there looking at social media and everything, but I figured they're just looking at LinkedIn, you know, because LinkedIn is like the social media professional page. Yeah. Okay. So I made sure my LinkedIn profile was good to go. Well, it was anyway. I mean, if you look at like my Instagram, and you look at my LinkedIn, you'll think, oh man, this is two different people. But that wasn't the case. Well, they had my LinkedIn, but they also had my Facebook. I'll never forget it. They had my Facebook, so they asked me about certain things, and I had some nothing racist. Okay, to be a little bit more disclosing. Some of the things that I had was how can I best put this without sounding like a creep? It was more sexual in nature, nothing illegal or nothing like that. You know, it was just small little light things, and it's like, well, tell us about this and tell us about that. And I was like, oh yeah, that was and for the most part, it was like, oh yeah, that was a running joke about my wife or whatever the case may be, or whatever. I had an answer for all of it. Yeah. But it goes to show that this department actually took those necessary additional steps to make sure that they hiring a good quality person. Yeah. Now, granted, every department may not necessarily have those resources. I'm kind of alluding to certain things as I'm talking. Yeah. They may not necessarily have those resources to be able to do these types of, you know, these type of reviewing and everything like that. But I did think it was, looking back at it, I can understand why they did it, and it was definitely necessary. And I've seen some people that didn't make the cut because of stuff like that. I've seen some of the things that they posted. I can tell you right now, with something like that, what you were talking about with that sheriff, they wouldn't have got picked up. So, where am I going with this? So the long and short, there has to be some type of vetting definitely needs to be ramped up. Okay. Oh yeah. Vetting would definitely need to be ramped up because there are some people that slip through the cracks. There have been some people that slip through the cracks with this department. They eventually get found out. So far they have, but it's definitely one of those things where a vetting is necessary. I do think that even though I do talk bad about social media, it does have its place, good, bad, or indifferent, especially when it comes down to picking up people that have to interact with the public. Yeah. So fortunately enough, they didn't. Well, there wasn't anything to see, but there was nothing that would have them question my interaction with the public. Man. Yeah. For the most part, there's like, oh, you're just a quiet guy to keep to yourself. Yes, I am. Oh shoot. So okay, so vetting
I think more extensive background and background checks, in 2023 shouldn't look like background checks back in 1991. You know what I'm saying? Because like you say,
Absolutely.
social media, a lot of people, oddly enough, will just put their whole life on there. You know what I'm saying? I'm not one of those people. I kind of got off Facebook and Instagram because it's like, whoa, it's a little too much for me. But
Right.
I think more extensive background, and in cases where once again, I just see these on these news coverage. So I don't want to make it seem like this is every police officer or the majority, but if it's a few, then it has to be more than just 3 police officers who's doing this. But they would do these investigations where they find these officers in these chat groups, in these kind of white supremacist chat groups, saying some things you don't want your police officer saying. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Me personally,
Somebody
like,
allowed them in. One bad apple can spoil a bunch of. I agree with that. Somebody has allowed them in, but
do
even
you?
what's done in the dark eventually comes to light too.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel one way that policing can gain more trust from their community and just a better light in general is the transparency part of
Mm-hmm.
it. Like, I want an active police force to be like, hey, we rooted these people out. We didn't wait for this ex police officer to accidentally kill this person, and then we find all this stuff, and now we're going to fire this police officer. I want it will make me feel like they know it's a problem and they're on top of it, instead of
Right.
being reactive to situation. Is like he had all this stuff on his Facebook and no one knew about it. A police officer, his friend, or someone heard him talking. No one brought this up, and if they do bring it up, what's the chances that once again, I'm just a little familiar with some of the policing, but you guys got one hell of a union, essentially. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not gonna just get fired just because. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of it feels like there's a lot of more bridges and hurdles to get a police officer, off the line than it is to get them on the line. I mean, does that make sense? Like
No, you're actually absolutely right. I do agree. Matter of fact, even in our department, it is difficult to actually get a police officer fired. And once they're on, and especially if they've surpassed their training process
yeah.
and they're vetted into the system and everything like that, it definitely is. Um, I think I think it's gonna one of the problems that comes into play is, and now I'm back to picking on media, is if if you have large groups of people saying vague stuff about police, then it's easy for somebody to just say, "Oh, they're upset." Especially when there's not many details of it and anything. I mean, if you're hearing every day, "Oh, police are bad, police are bad, police are bad," and then you got a police officer like, "Well, I'm a police, I'm not bad." So it's kind of easy to write that off, like, "Oh, these people just talking."
Mm-hmm.
Versus if these large groups of people came out with how these kids say they have the receipts.
Yeah.
They have actual solid evidence. Not police are bad, but officer such and such is a bad person, and here's the proof. All right, well then that brings the light to that individual, and it'll be easier to get said individual out, or easier to get certain administrative things towards that individual. It does two things. One, it doesn't necessarily downplay police as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
All right, which will create a divide, which will create a divide within that officer versus their union. All right, the union is going to look out for the union. And what that means is they're going to look out for the masses, not necessarily the individual.
Yeah.
So if they get complaints towards the masses or even just a group, then yeah, it's easier to defend. But if it's just the individual, then hey, they might have cut that. There's a large probability they're going to cut that individual loose. Take that sheriff for example. It wasn't the sheriff's department. It was the sheriff. So that person is bad. Here's the proof. Here's the receipts. This person needs to be removed. And it's easier to get that person removed versus, oh, the sheriff's department is bad. Well, you want to get rid of the entire sheriff's department?
Yeah.
That makes it a little bit harder. It makes it a little bit more, it's more politics that have to come to. It can be done. It definitely could, anything could be done, but it's obviously going to be a lot harder.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, okay, so here's a question. And, I was going to say you don't have to answer this if you don't want, but I mean, if you don't answer, it's almost like answering. But I mean, I want to just ask the question.
No comment,
Once again, using the racist sheriff as an example, in this situation, he was talking to other police officers. It was like 3 or 4 of them in the room, and one of the officers left his phone in there recording, and then he walked out. And this is how all this was brought to light. And I'm pretty sure, this is everyone's, kind of first question is, if these other police officers that was just listening to this guy see all these crazy things talking about lynching black folks, I'm pretty sure it's not his first conversation mentioning this. And if it is, how come no one said anything? Like, hey, whoa, why did it take someone leaving their phone secretly to catch him on audio saying these crazy things? You know what I'm saying? So it feels once again like if policing and community is to work together, I think the best way to show the public to be like, hey, we don't like the bad apples either. Like you say, a bad apple can spoil all the apples, you know what I'm saying? And it just makes you look bad. You know what I'm saying? It makes the officers who wake up every day, who wants to do their job in a professional manner and actually wants to protect people, now you look bad because of an officer way on the other side of the country. You know what I'm saying? So if police officers held each other accountable, like in that situation, if, the lady who was in there was like, hey, I'm going to snitch you out myself. You know what I'm saying? Right. That would have, I think the story would have been a lot more better. It'd be like, oh, these were actually officers who heard this and snitched them out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So my question to you, and me being as an African American, I've kind of grown to get out of this mindset, but I don't care about snitching. You know what I'm saying? If you're doing something illegal, I'm going to tell on you. Don't tell me you're doing X, Y, and Z because, I live in a community now. I have kids. I don't want that around me. You know what I'm saying? Right. So my question to you is, once again, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but if you were to hear Officer X say some pretty racist things and, or you seen his Facebook post or his Twitter post and it's like, whoa, it's not a question of, is it racist in your mind, for the sake of this example, like, hey, that was pretty racist. Would you say anything?
Absolutely. I'm gonna be honest with you. I already knew the answer to this question while you were still asking it. Absolutely. Look, I work here, okay, and I know that my job is dangerous and everything like that. And with everything that I said, especially when it came down to the community having this, the community developing this certain mindset when it came down to policing and whatnot, I still have to work here. I'm already going to there's a high likelihood I'm already going to go to a situation where this might be my last day on earth. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need those people working around me. So I'm on both sides of this, trying to de-escalate as much as possible. So rest assured, in that scenario that you painted where this sheriff is talking all of this recklessness and this, that, and the third, would I snitch? Absolutely. But the only thing that would probably be different, because I'm passionate about stuff like that, is I probably wouldn't have got it on phone. because I'd have been cussing them out. That's probably the only. Again, I wasn't there. I can't say what I would definitively do, but there's a high likelihood that one, people know my mindset. People know where I stand on certain positions, this, that, and the third. So either that sheriff wasn't going to be saying all of that around me because they know what I was going to do,
Yeah.
or if they were emboldened if they were bold enough that day, I was going to check them. But I will say, and this is not making an excuse for anybody else that sees it and doesn't say anything. Just like you said earlier, it is difficult to get sometimes it is difficult to get a police officer removed or fired or whatever the case may be. There's a thing called retaliation. And when you're dealing with somebody that's a supervisor, I mean, there's going to be investigations, there's going to be scrutiny. There's a thing called FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. So even if you file complaints against somebody, that person that you filed those complaints against, this is part of the Constitution, they have the right to see all of the things that's brought before them. So let's paint this scenario. That sheriff, right? This said this, that, and the third. The phone isn't even there, so it's not really much evidence. It's more or less hearsay.
Yeah.
The investigation is done. There's not enough suitable evidence to remove this person or get them fired. The sheriff can now sit up there and get all of the documentation in relation to this investigation. And even though some things are going to be redacted, a good investigator, police officers are investigators. A good investigator is going to be able to determine who said what. So now, not only did the sheriff not go anywhere, but the person that said X, Y, and Z against them still works for them. And even though retaliation is supposed to be against the law and is unethical, that's not to say it doesn't happen. It happens.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, so that is a concerning factor when it comes down to police officers.
So let me ask you this. So do you think? Let me see. Do you think? And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this because this is something I will have to kind of research and kind of figure out because I never thought about that interaction. So should that not be a thing then? Like if an officer reports a supervisor or another officer, just like in HR department at my job, if I said, hey, XYZ, person's doing this, they're not gonna, they shouldn't be like, hey, Jerome said that, you was, it should be, that information should be sealed, should not be disclosed.
It's called redacting it.
Yeah.
It's called redacting it. Look, there's been an investigation against me back from when I was in Germany, all right? And through the Freedom of Information Act, first, the investigation was determined unfounded, which I knew was going to be the outcome, but that's a different story for another day. Anyway, I got the information and I could already conclude based off of what was written and things like that. Because like I said, police officers are investigators. I can determine based off of what was written, who said what. And I just went from there. The information names were redacted. So in a sense, this HR, they did their part, but they are duty bound by the Freedom of Information Act where they have to give this information up. They have to. It's legally binding.
So should that not be a thing? Should they
for you?
Yeah.
That absolutely should be a thing. It actually perpetuates the whole, you said it earlier, transparency when it comes down to the public and police. See, if you don't have these Freedom of Information Acts, then it's like the government is going to hide something. Now, granted, it started off really well. Like, all right, if y'all want to know about this, you file these appropriate forms, you get this information. Yes, some stuff is still going to be redacted for whatever purpose it may be. Sometimes it's national security, but you can actually get information afforded to you if you take the appropriate steps. I really wholeheartedly believe that should be there. But at the same time, that's a good and a bad thing because not only is the public entitled to that, but anybody's entitled to that. You can literally do a FOIA request on the Derek Chauvin case if you wanted to. It's up to you if you do, but if you wanted to, you could.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's going to legally stop. Matter of fact, if somebody attempted to stop you, that's against the law.
Well, I was
and that's what the Freedom of Information Act covers.
Yeah, well, I was speaking more, and once again, this is just me new in this scenario. But to protect the police officer who wants to report a colleague and knows that, hey, if he doesn't get sent out, it could be an possible retaliation, which could discourage people from speaking up. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, there's steps in place for stuff like that. I mean, you see, if you go to any, especially in the government, you see all of these folders about do not worry about retaliation, defending, and it all looks good on the surface.
Yeah.
There's definitely steps that's on the surface, but I'm talking about underlining things. I mean, granted, information is still going to be redacted. That obviously, but they can only redact for so much before it's not even enough freedom of information.
Yeah.
So certain things is going to have to still be given to that person. And if they get enough information, they start asking the right questions, they're going to figure it out. I mean, literally, a police officer's job, one of the police officer's job is to ask questions, get answers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you can redact all you want, but with the little bit of evidence, stuff builds up and they'll figure it out. And yeah, of course, they're going to sit up there and say, when it comes down to retaliation, here's hidden retaliation. All right, the investigation is completely cleared. I'm still feeling I'm that sheriff. I'm feeling some kind of way because Officer Jerome is I can't really hard prove it, but I believe Officer Jerome is the one that did this. I may be right, I may be wrong, but I think I'm right. Officer Jerome is the one that did this. Well, now Officer Jerome is going to be out there doing, I don't know, he's going to do traffic monitoring or something. He's going to be out in the busy street directing traffic or something like that. No, I'm not going to, obviously I can't fire him. That's blatant. That's obvious.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make his life a living hell all the way up until the point that he quits.
Yeah.
That's real life. That can happen. And I think that's one of the motivators why there's police officers out there who do see it and they don't say anything, because they know that it's not enough evidence. It's not enough solid. Granted, with that phone being there, I think that would have been enough evidence, but sometimes you don't have those opportunities. And then not to mention, there's also a legal thing too. Because with the phone, you didn't say where it was. If you did, I didn't remember it. But there are certain places where there's what's called a two-party consent.
Yeah.
If you're going to record somebody without their consent, it's considered illegal. State of Maryland is like that. So, say for instance, that is the case in this. All right, you recorded this person with your phone, and yeah, they saying some really messed up stuff, but now you're also susceptible to legal charges. You're susceptible to legal charges. That sheriff is only susceptible to administrative charges, which means that sheriff can still get his retirement, where you probably going to be behind bars.
Now,
so there is elements where it makes a person just say, you know what, I'm just going to pretend like I didn't hear it. I'm not saying it's right. It's definitely not right.
Yeah.
But with these contributing factors, that's where we are.
Huh. Now, I definitely, and once again, like, I think this is a good thing for me to kind of, figure out, study a little bit more and get more familiar with, because I think that shouldn't be too hard of a barrier, or it shouldn't be that difficult if a police officer is seeing, some sort of, warning signs or whatever you want to call it in a fellow police officer, because, that's one of the things that, I always hear is, policing, they're not policing themselves. They're not rooting out their own bad apples, and they're just doing this. And it's like, I believe some of them would, and just, with our conversation is like, but like it may be close to impossible, and then they have to worry about themselves. So it's almost like, there's no upside to doing that, and you're just putting a target on your back. You know what I'm saying? I think something like that should be kind of looked at more and kind of figured out better.
Racism now has a cloak on it, okay, and it gets harder to prove. And again, if you don't have certain evidence on certain things, if you don't have enough evidence on certain things, nothing will happen. And when you're dealing with a group of people, I'm talking about police officers now, that know how to operate within the law, then quite inherently they're going to be able to figure out how to operate outside of the law as well without being caught.
Yeah. Well, shoot.
They have that ability. Whether or not they do it or not, I'm not saying police officers do it, but whether or not they do it or not, they have that ability. They know what the investigators are going to be looking for. They know what the prosecutors are going to be working for, because they work with these people every day. Tyrone, he details vehicles, does a great job of it, by the way. He does my vehicle. He's the only person that cleans my truck. I don't clean my truck. Now, if I went out there to try to clean my truck, I'm not going to be able to do such a good job as him, because this is what he does every day. This is his realm. This is how he operates. Now, with police officers, when it comes down, we're not lawyers, but we're in those courtrooms also. So we know the verbiage. We know what's looked at. We know things like fruits of the poisonous tree. That's the term when it comes down to obtaining evidence, but if you did it illegally, is now no longer admissible in court. And it could be that key evidence that could have got somebody prosecuted.
Yeah.
You know, and all of this information is free. It's not like the public can't look at it too, but because it's so much information, a lot of people just don't.
Yeah.
But if you really look into the woods of it and everything, and yeah, you can see I can see certain stuff. I don't, but if I was to see certain stuff, I'm up there taking a mental note. If I bring this up, what's the probability that the outcome is going to get this guy removed out of this department? And there's a lot of cases where it's not enough. It's not enough, because we've worked in that realm so long. So unfortunately, this asshole, this sheriff, is able to continue to do what they're doing for so long, and part of it is because they got real good at hiding it. I'm gonna say something that's kind of really controversial, but just bear with me and hear me out.
Okay.
I am glad Donald Trump was the president for the time he was the president. Here's why.
Okay.
First, let me be clear.
Hopefully you're going where I think you're going.
He motivated a group of people that was hidden to now come out and say how they really feel towards other groups of people, that let me know where not to go, who not to involve myself with.
You ain't lying.
He did. He motivated a lot of people to now say the quiet part out loud. Like at one point in time, there was people that could call me a nigga behind my back, but now Donald Trump is in office, they feel as though they can do it to my face. And they can. It's problem. No problem. You can, but now I don't have to interact with you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've exposed yourself so I can separate myself from you. That's why I'm glad he was president. That's it. Nothing else.
And you know what? To add on top of that, because I had that conversation with myself before, and it was a little bit different, because when Barack Obama became president, it was cool. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like I was happy. That was the first time I voted. I was like, okay, that was cool. But oddly enough, and it's weird how I don't know if I'm the only one who reacts like this, but when Donald Trump became president, that's when I got more into my books. Right. It's not because of Barack Obama, you know what I'm saying? But when Trump came into office, that's when I really got into politics. That's when I really start reading about history. That's when I really start really educating myself about our political system and in our justice system and how all this stuff works. And it's almost like, well, thank you. You know what I'm saying? Because now I'm more equipped now. You created this, Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying? So oddly enough, I'm right along with you. Like, hey, I'm glad he did, because, I just be chilling. You know what I'm saying? I be doing what I want, but so the last question, and this is the big question. I don't like using defund the police. Now, once again, and I didn't ask you your political ideologies. Once again, I don't really think that's really important, especially in this kind of conversation. But one thing that I realized that a lot of Republicans, not all, but a lot of the politicians and media, they like to distort words. They like to take words and flip it, flop it, and make a whole new meaning out of it. For example, critical race theory. Once again, this is a whole different conversation, but no one's teaching your 5-year-old critical race theory that is a subject for college students. That's not a thing. You know what I'm saying? Being woke. That was created, back in what? I think they said like the 80s by black folks, saying, hey, stay awake. That was an empowering things to tell somebody. Now, a lot of Republicans use that as a negative term. You know what I'm saying? Right. So once again, defund the police. That's supposed to mean reallocate funds in a different way to try to get better solutions. No one in their right mind who's living in America, this might work in another country, but not in America. No one is talking about getting rid of the police. I will not be one voting to get rid of police. I just called the police over here a couple weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? I need the police. I think they serve a valuable function in society. Until, there's no more hate in the world, then we can talk about getting rid of the police. But until then, like, we got to work with what we got. But when people, I believe the first idea of defunding the police was just to take some of the funds. For example, if a police department gets $1 billion, take some of that, a quarter of that, and put it into mental health resources, or a counselor of some sort that can ride with a police officer going to a domestic violence or a mental health situation. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to find ways to use those funds to better the community, because the main point of policing is to keep the public safe. You know what I'm saying? So if we can find creative ways to do that better, because in some areas like Chicago, and I've never been to Chicago, I just hear from what I read and stuff on the news, but giving more money didn't help Chicago, and they gave more money year after year, and they're still having the same issues. So obviously, just giving more money, just throwing money at the wall is not going to solve the issue. So my question is, and I'm pretty sure there's people smarter than me that can figure this out, but I do believe finding ways to take some of the money. I don't want to say all, because obviously, like I'm pretty sure you're going to say more training, better, hiring practices, or whatever the case is. That's going to take resources, obviously. But for the public's sake, to take some of those funds to try to solve some of the rooted issue in these impoverished areas could work. But once again, the conversation got mixed up and lost, and now it's just a weird conversation that some people have because they don't know what defunding is supposed to mean. So my question to you is, do you think if Baltimore decided to use some of the funds, not all of it, but a portion of it, and use it in a different way to assist you in policing, do you think that's a bad thing?
It's a great thing. And yeah, I'm wholeheartedly for that. The problem that we came across, and you touched on it, was when you hear the term defund the police. Well, that even though it sounds like it's a simple term, it's not. There's people that can translate that in many different ways, and I'm not going to point any fingers. I'm not even going to mention this particular politician's name, but there actually is a politician who has stated and they're on camera stating this, that they wanted to completely get rid of police officers in a particular area.
Okay. First,
And
you're gonna have to tell me
that
who,
was
because that person should be out of office if they're really advocating for something stupid like that. Because
I will send you. I was watching it earlier on YouTube, and I will send you the link that I was watching. It's still saved in my history.
Oh, beautiful,
I'll put it. I'll put it into this chat.
Okay.
But it was in the topic, and it was in the topic under defunding the police. But I do know that. Well, let me back up. I've concluded that term was more spoke from emotion at the time, because there is a problem when it comes down to policing. Generally speaking, broad stroke, there's a problem with policing in this country, and there obviously needs to be training. And there are actually agencies out there that have allocated some of their funds towards the mental health crisis. And I'm a big ups to San Diego, because I seen it firsthand in San Diego. There was a guy, I want to say I was in a Kinko's, or I forget, one of those types of stores. The guy was having a problem. Police was there, but then there was another guy that was with them, and come to find out he was a mental health counselor. So there are agencies out there that actually do that stuff. But when you just look at defund the police on its surface, because it can be the translation is in the ears of the beholder, if you will. It can turn into certain things, and then it only further creates a problem. Let me paint you a scenario for a second. Somebody that's just looking at the term defund the police on its surface, not saying that it means this, but on its surface, it's essentially saying that they're going to cut their paycheck. Well, how motivated do you think that person is going to be to go to work? Not even their paycheck. They're going to cut some of the equipment that they're afforded. How motivated are they going to be to do their job? You know, I mean, at the same time, you pay for what you get. If you go to a dollar store to get a box of trash bags, chances are you're going to have to double up on them trash bags because they were so cheap. You're not going to get the good quality ones. You know, so I think the term on its surface did further create a problem. Because it should have gone into detail as into what defund the police, whoever originally said it should have gone into detail as to what exactly it was talking about, and denounce anybody that was talking about extremes, as in terms of completely getting rid of police agencies. That's insane. Depending on your particular beliefs, crime has been around since the dawn of time, and I'm referring back to Cain and Abel.
Oh yeah.
So crime has been around for quite some time. To think that you don't need police is asinine. I said it. But yeah, funding reallocated towards other things. I honestly would believe that is a resource for police officers. Fortunately enough, in my department, we do have those. We actually do have that those fundings allocated. So if, depending on the situation, if I need a mental health counselor, they don't ride along with me. But if I do need one, there will be one on call 24/7, and that's afforded to us. Some agencies don't have those. So when it comes down to defunding the police, it's a really, really touchy subject that needs to be elaborated, and a definitive and an actual definition on what that exactly entails. Because on the surface, some people can translate this to, well, my check is being cut, or the equipment I'm using is going to be cut. And I'll do one better. It'll then balloon into a situation where people don't want to be police officers. I asked my daughter the other day. I already knew the answer, but I asked her anyway. I was like, "Would you be a cop later on in life?" She immediately said no. She said no faster than what I said. I would absolutely snitch on that sheriff. Because it's not popular to her. Why would she want to do that?
Yeah.
Well, these ranks are thinning out, and if there's nobody to fill them, now you're going to overwork your officers. And if you're overworking your officers, that thick skin that I was talking about is going to start wearing down, and it perpetuates an even bigger problem later. So that defund the police thing is strong words that's having a great effect, and not necessarily in a positive way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Me and my wife recently just watched the Flint series documentary on Netflix, and it was talking about, you know, policing in Flint, Michigan, and that what you said is exactly what was happening. And you know, this was just a few years ago, but they had shortage of police. They had to work double shifts. They were tired. It was an impoverished area, so you know, of course, petty crime is going to be on the rise, and they weren't sure, you know, the pay cuts and everything. So I do believe that that's a real thing, and you know, it shouldn't be, because I'm a high believer of paying essential workers more than what they're getting paid now. Like, once again, I'm probably on the extreme when it comes to this, but I, you know, to put this simple, sports figures are paid too much, and our essential workers like the fire department, police officers, teachers, nurses are paid way too low. Like, right. To be in a field like that, you have to be, for your time and what you're offering, and you know, for our conversation, to be a police officer, you're putting literally everything on the line. You know what I'm saying? So you should be at least compensated. You know, money's not everything, but that shouldn't be an issue. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not even a police officer, and I feel that way. You know what I'm saying? So I do understand when it comes to police officers being underpaid, and especially in the conversation of defunding the police, that shouldn't be a thing. Now, on the flip side, with more pay comes more responsibility. You know what I'm saying? And with the hiring practices, I think that should be even higher. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I put in my application and got my interview to be a supervisor, and I never been a supervisor before, I had to show a whole bunch. I had to put in a year at my job. I had to show, you know, my receipts, essentially, that I can perform this job. Now, of course, you know, being a police officer demands a lot more mentally and physically. I think whoever, you know, John Doe shouldn't just be able to be like, hey, I want to be a police officer. Then in the next 2 weeks, boom, he's walking around, you know, with a badge and a gun. You know what I'm saying? Now, I know it's not just 2 weeks, but, you know, I'm just kind of just simplifying it. But I think it should be a lot more required from police officers. And once again, like, you know, I don't know what you guys already have to do. And, you know, once again, this could probably be another conversation that we can have. But I do believe in more pay. Now, once again, the idiots that are, you know, advocating for getting rid of the police, like, that's the dumbest thing ever. Like, right. That's not even a conversation to have. I will not waste my time with anybody having a serious conversation about getting rid of the police. That's, you know, they should, like, really be fired. Let me see. One thing that I think would be beneficial, and now that I think of it, I definitely need to figure out how these funds are now spread out, because just from what I hear, and I don't want to just make that gospel truth, but it seems like from what I hear is that these funds just go into essentially, you know, cool toys. You know what I'm saying? Like bigger trucks, bigger guns, riding gear, you know, military type, you know, things for the police, and not really, you know, spread out into a better, I guess, a better responsible way. Now, once again, you know, I didn't really look into how that is really spread out now. That's just kind of what I hear a lot of these people say. Do you have any idea how that is, or do you have any information on that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna point fingers. And this is actually a broad stroke. So this is not definitive to one department or the other. But typically, your chief of police or your sheriff or whatever the case may be, they have to go to some level of politician to ask for the funds, and in that request, they have to actually itemize where dollar amounts are going. So I'm gonna stop picking on Baltimore. I'm gonna go to San Diego now. I was telling you about the mental health counselor that goes along with these people. That means that some high-ranking official in the police department went to their House Judiciary or whatever politician they needed to and requested the funds for that. They said, hey, we need, and we'll use round numbers, we need $1 million to fund this department or this section for this. And it was voted on and it was agreed to. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily happen. And I owe you 2 YouTube videos because there was another one. Now, trigger warning, when I show you what the second video I'm gonna show you is by these twins on YouTube called Hodge Twins. They're very controversial, but if you look past them, the video was about this sheriff who went to his house committee and he asked for $20,000 or something like that for a boat. And the reason why is because the last fiscal year there was bodies that was being dropped off in the river or something like that, and it was difficult for them to actually solve these murders.
Yeah.
And that politician told him to go pound sand. And there was a private company that ended up giving them the money for the boat anyway. But the money is not like police departments themselves say, oh, we're going to get this amount of money and we're going to put it towards this. No, that money is actually coming from politicians. They're the ones that collect the funds and they divvy it out to different things. They divvy it out to schools and hospitals as well.
Yeah.
But it's under the understanding that X amount of dollars is going to go towards X amount of things. So in all reality, when it comes down to how funds are spent in respect to the police departments, it's actually on politicians. I said, I'm pointing the finger. It's on politicians because the politicians are getting the request. They're getting the paperwork. They're seeing that it's supposed to go to X, Y, and Z. Now, that doesn't mean that the police department won't turn around, take the money, and spend it on something else. But if they do, obviously that's a misappropriation of funds, which is illegal.
Yeah.
And it's really easy for them to get fired. So, but the long and short on the surface, these police agencies, these police departments, they're requesting funds for X, Y, and Z, and the politicians are giving it to them. So, and you know as well as I do, politicians are voted in by the people.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, how the funds should be allocated in respects to the police departments, that's on your politicians.
So essentially, because like always, you know what I mean, it's pretty obvious. The politicians don't get in there by themselves, as you already pointed out. Like, we vote for these people. I think, and once again, this information is probably out there. I probably need to dig a little deeper, but it's really hard to find information on how much funds the police department, or, at least in my area in Colorado and Denver, how much they get a year, where it's going to. Once again, I think transparency is probably one of the best ways to have a happy relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've been married. You're married. Like, that transparency between you and your wife, like, that means a lot. You know what I'm saying?
I can't spend over $100 without her knowing.
Exactly. I can't spend $5. You know what I'm saying? Like she knows all my passwords, everything. But that transparency builds that trust. You know what I'm saying? And I wish, it's 2023. You know what I'm saying? I think, J. Cole said it best. Like, I should be able to see where my taxes is going on my phone, and it shouldn't be like, trying to find Waldo. You remember Where's Waldo in those books?
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, that's how it feels looking for this information online. Like, I don't know what information, I don't know what to type in there. I don't know if it's true what I'm reading. Like, it shouldn't be this difficult. And it's 2023. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got amazing technology in our pockets. They should make it available and transparent to, hey, this is where your tax dollars are going. This is how much your local police department got. And you know, if you want to get more information, go to this link and we're going to have this whole spreadsheet right here for you. Just like I tell my wife, hey, here's my Friday check. This is where this bill is going. This is how much this costs. And this is the little bit we have for fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think if our governments as a whole, really, because it's all out of whack, and we, for some reason, we vote in these incompetent people and they just do whatever they want with the funds and we never hear from it. I think if we had reliable people in these positions to be transparent, I feel like the relationship would be a lot better between essentially anybody. Well, essentially civilians and the government. You know what I'm saying? Because policing is a portion of it. But I think the broader relationship is the citizens and the government. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, once again, transparency, I think that means a lot. So when at least when I say defund the police, once again, not getting rid of the police, not cutting pay for police, because if anything, they need more. But I just want, if anything, I just want to see what the funds are doing and if mental health is an issue. Because in Uvalde, I forget the governor's name, but after the Uvalde shooting, he said mental health is a problem. And he did this whole entire thing. He looked like he was really serious. He was almost crying. And then later on, when they tried to pass a bill, he actually, either he denied the bill or he cut the funding even more. And it's like, but you just said mental health is an issue and we need to put money to it. But now you're sitting here cutting the budget. You know what I'm saying? So go ahead.
I'm sorry, but politicians, and this is not all, but politicians are bought. Okay,
for sure.
They are. They're bought. They're every time they get elected, they're the ones that are bought. Their goal is to get reelected. Yeah. I mean, that's how they make. At the end of the day, that's their source of revenue. That's their source of income. So, of course, I mean, let's be honest with each other. How are you going to be a senator and then the next day you're driving Uber? No, they want to stay in these lines of work. And I'm not downplaying any Uber drivers. I actually like them. Hell, I have stock in it. But that is their job. Their job is to do and say anything necessary to get reelected. So they will do and say anything necessary to get reelected. They don't necessarily mean they feel this way. They only really listening to what their constituents are telling them, at least the ones that are giving them enough money, lobbying them. And they're going to do and say whatever's necessary in front of a camera to essentially get them reelected. And in some cases, they're going to vote what's necessary for their constituents. But in all reality, they're only motivated by whoever's padding their pockets. They're bought. And that's, I mean, when it comes down to the depths of politicians that are bought, it's at least for Baltimore, it was the mayor. Mayors, as a matter of fact. And one could argue it made its way all the way up to presidency. I don't have any solid proof. But it's safe to say that any politician between your city representative all the way up to the president of the United States, possibly, not saying it's definitely happening, but possibly could have been bought.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just by who. That's really what it boils down to, is who were they bought by. And hopefully the person that bought them has the same views that you do.
Well, I mean, now, when it comes to these conversations, and once again, you know, if we want to branch off in these to these conversations on another day, I mean, that's pretty much all I study. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
politicians being bought, that is the number one problem why we're in this mess that we're in today. Like, without a doubt. You know what I'm saying? These
Right.
big corporations, they're doing what they're supposed to do, is look out for their benefit. And the best way to do that is to spend money to make money. And they give these money, the money to the politicians, because they know they're going to look out for the company's best interest at the end of the day, which is, you know, more money for them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I mean, at the root of all of this is, for some reason, it's always the politicians. You know what I'm saying? But we as the people, we're kind of implicit in that because, you know, I guess out of just being naive or just, you know, hoping that they're going to do what they're supposed to do, but we vote them in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, I you know, it might have to, you know, be another revolution. I don't know what it's gonna take, but, you know, essentially this is what this video is for, or, you know, let alone my channel, is to at least to try to start something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I may not be that guy, but if I can inspire someone listening to be that guy, then I did my job. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
when people come together collectively, that's when change really happens. I mean,
oh yeah,
that history has proven that time and time again. Is when people come together collectively, and the unfortunate part is, if you understand that, then there's also people that's going to understand. So long as you keep the people divided, um, the people, there's other people who wouldn't necessarily have made it will be able to prevail.
yep,
I'll use this as an example. I really don't like talking about it, but Donald Trump won. Donald Trump didn't really win the presidency. He just beat out his competition. I
mm.
mean, look back at it for a second. There was people that voted for a dead gorilla.
Yeah,
There was people. This is what happened. There was people that voted for a dead gorilla. These, what his party was able to do was divide the party that would have voted for Hillary. He divided them so much to the point where that's how he won. He didn't even win the popularity vote. He
yeah,
just won the electoral college. He
yeah,
created so much of a divide, which is how he was able to slide in there. Why? Because the people couldn't come together collectively on it. Look at the
mm.
opposite side of the coin. Barack Obama, when he announced his presidency, there's a large group of people that came together collectively to vote this guy in.
Yeah,
So the people actually do have the power in a lot of things, even when it comes down to policing. I was telling Tyrone this earlier before we got on, that in all reality, police, in a perfect world, police can only enforce what the laws that people say are laws. Give an example, and this is an extreme example, but this is only further illustrating my point. Say, for instance, for whatever reason, murder was no longer illegal. Police officers couldn't enforce any murders. They couldn't investigate any crimes when it came in respects to murder. If the people said it was no longer illegal, the laws
yeah,
that are on the books now were created by politicians who were voted into office by the people. Now, some of them are obvious. Murder definitely is illegal, and it should be, but
yeah,
so it's obvious, yes. But when you get down to them smaller laws and everything like that, I mean, again, this is using an example I was talking with Tyrone. There's a city in this country, I can't remember which one it is, but it's illegal to have ice cream. It's illegal to have ice cream in your pocket for whatever reason. I don't know. It's one of those silly laws. I was looking at it one day, but the point is that the people in that area decided that this should be a law,
yeah. That's
and it
true.
became law. The people have the power so long as they come together collectively. Now, if there's a divide, then it's just a bunch of noise. But if everybody started singing in harmony, yeah, the people could actually could make the necessary moves.
Yep.
But it do essentially it comes back onto the people. Yes, the politicians are the figurehead into this, but the politicians are only put in the office by the people. When you look at the Constitution, it says "we the people." That's there for a reason.
Yeah, you ain't lying, man.
But look,
well,
hey, I'm sorry. If we're cutting it short, I'm sorry, but it's after 11 o'clock, and I am at work. There's checks I have to do, unfortunately.
oh no, you good. Well, shoot. I mean, we're ending in a good spot. I'll just make this real brief. Once again, I appreciate you doing this because I'm pretty sure not a lot of officers would want to take the time and be transparent. So I appreciate that, and stay in the Discord so we can definitely do this again.
Absolutely. And when I'm done with these checks, I gotta do these checks around this area. But when I'm done with these checks, I'm gonna get on YouTube and I'm gonna put those links in there. Like I said, one is by the politician that actually said it was a local police department. I can't remember which one, but she actually did say to get rid of them. And
That's
then the other
crazy.
one is by the Hodge twins. What was that? Forgot what I was. I'm gonna definitely send you one with the politician because I looked at that and I was like, yo, she lost for that.
Definitely do that. Hey, Mr.
All right.
Officer Thompson. But once again, I appreciate you taking this time, and hey, you stay safe, and I'll be talking to you real soon.
Absolutely. You take care.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed that interview. Let me know in the comments down below because once again, like I said, this was my first interview like on this channel. You know what I'm saying? So let me know what I can improve on, what was your favorite parts, and let's just have that conversation because I plan on having more of these types of interviews to benefit you guys and to give you guys the information and the education that you guys need and want. So once again, thank you for watching Power to the Pod, and I will see you guys in the next video.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to join the conversation by subscribing. Make sure to tune in next time, and like always, power to you, power to me, power to the people, power to the pod.